Hey, greetings good people and welcome to MOSHBITS, the series where I report on the latest news in tech and gaming. For anyone new around here, if you happen to like the content, then just hit that subscribe button because I have a lot of news for you. Oh, and one more thing. No, seriously, one more thing. This is what Apple says from time to time at the end of their presentations, but this time around the company has just announced an event with the exact same title, and we expect it to be also the first time when we'll see the ARM-based MacBooks presented by Tim Cook and his company at this point. We've already had rumors for quite a while now that the ARM-based MacBook will be shown in November, including Apple saying earlier this year that they'll be showcasing their first ARM-based laptops, given that they're planning to phase out Intel models in 2 years. Expect to see a ton of leaks from John Prosser and his friends in the upcoming period, including maybe more information on the AirTags. Now, if you'd like to learn more about them, then I'll just leave a link in the video description. And if you are curious about the performance of those new laptops, rumors have it that early testers have been quite impressed by its abilities, but not much more I can offer on the subject. But I'd be curious to see how Apple will handle the entire transformation from x86 to ARM. And here's a question for you. Are you actually planning on getting your hands on one of those? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget that Martin from TechAltar and I will both be hosting, or co-hosting in this case, a watch party for this event on our crowd Discord server on November 10th at 7 p.m. Central European Summer Time. So check the links in the video description if you'd like to hear us talk about it instead of only Apple. Speaking of transitioning from Intel, let's hope that Team Blue has some secret sauce up their sleeves. Now, the company is currently working on their Lake-S and Alder Lake CPUs, both of which should theoretically launch next year, which is a bit confusing. I've personally lost track of Intel, especially with the new motherboards, Lake naming schemes, and whatever else they're doing right now. It's all very confusing to me, so don't mind me if I say some things that are wrong. Links to all the original articles will be in the description. Now, I've personally, like I said, lost track of it, but luckily the upcoming 11th gen, those being the Lake-S chips, will be working on the existing 400 series motherboards as well as on the future 500 series MOBOs. It sure sounds a lot like AMD to me at this point with 400, 500 and so on and so forth, even with the numbers, but I can see how this is going to be oddly confusing for new PC builders. Either way, Alder Lake, which is the 12th gen series, was also confirmed and should launch somewhere at the end of 2021, but you will however need a new motherboard for those since the new socket type is LGA 1700. And that's a lot of pins and a lot of things to change. So what are you doing, Intel? Their top-of-the-line chip will have 8 big cores and 8 small cores, which means you can expect to get a maximum of 16 cores on the highest-end chip, but there's a catch. Hyper-threading will only work on the big cores, so you're left only with 16 cores and 24 threads, unlike with the 3950X from AMD, where you have 16 cores and 32 threads. Oh, Intel, I hope you have a plan, because AMD is most certainly crushing you this time around, especially now that we've seen the Cinebench R20 single-core performance benchmarks, something that I've talked about in my first YouTube Shorts video, so do make sure to check that out as well. But alright, let's talk about ASROCK and their AMD RX 6800 series cards, those being of course the normal and the XT version, because ASROCK decided to just use the reference design for those graphics cards, and it's a bit surprising to see that yet another manufacturer is sticking to pretty much a carbon copy of the reference RX 6800 and 6800 XT cards from AMD that we've already seen at the Big Navi event. Gigabyte and Sapphire have also made very little changes to those, with Gigabyte adding their name to the board and Sapphire changing the backplate as far as I was able to tell, not more things that I was able to see, but we're only about 2 weeks away from the AMD Big Navi launch, so those being the 6800, 6800 XT and 6900 XT cards, so hopefully we'll see more designs being added, and this doesn't just mean that AAB partners didn't have enough time to make their own custom designs, because that would most certainly suck, but who knows, maybe this instead actually means that we'll be getting a lot more cheaper options and plenty of stocks, and hopefully that's not all just wishful thinking at this point. And hopefully AMD having good ray tracing performance is not just wishful thinking either, because from AMD's marketing department we've learned that, and I quote, they will support all racing titles using industry-based standards including the Microsoft DXR API and the upcoming Vulkan Ray Tracing API. Games making use of proprietary ray tracing APIs and extensions will not, however, be supported. In layman's terms, if Nvidia will have some of its proprietary implementations in future games, then we might not see AMD being capable of running those basically, and that sucks. But at the same time, Intel will support DirectX DXR, and aside from that being a deciding factor for developers for sure, I can see how catering to a larger audience will make it less likely for them to focus entirely on Nvidia's implementation. Plus, don't forget AMD is dominating the console market right now, so it doesn't seem all that likely that developers will only be using Nvidia's RTX technology. But do expect to see Control RTX work with AMD's cards, but not Quake 2 RTX and Wolfenstein Youngblood, as those are, of course, using Nvidia's proprietary technology. But you know what, it's enough to talk about ray tracing for today, and now let's go on and talk about VRAM, also something very important because AMD is getting plenty of VRAM across the board with their new GPUs having 16 gigs of VRAM across the board like I said, and Nvidia's RTX 3070 rocking only 8GB and the RTX 3080 with 10, with the top of the line 3090 having 24, but we're not talking about that right now. The problem is, as far as I know, and if you haven't failed Math 101, then you probably know this one as well, 8 and 10 are both smaller than 12, unless they're combined. In this case, they're not. So yeah, Nvidia might be having some issues over here for GODFALL, 4K, Ultra, HD textures, whatever you want to call it. So like I said, gamers who want to play this game at 4K Ultra settings will be required to have 12 gigs of memory for their Ultra HD textures. But if you remember that Nvidia's, remember what Nvidia had included in their RTX 3070 reviewer's guide appendix, they mentioned over there that even if a game requires more VRAM than the GPU actually has, this shouldn't necessarily impact the performance. And whether this is indeed true, we'll have to see when GODFALL launches November 12th, but secret alert over here, I think this will actually impact performance. We'll see by how much. And don't forget that AMD's cards are coming out November 18th, and those have 16 gigs of VRAM and supposedly some great performance, and they're also coming out to consoles, so we'll see how much of a difference the VRAM will actually play in this case. But for the past couple of days, I've also been talking about how Snapdragon is getting ready to unveil their next generation of SoCs, and the time is nigh. The latest reports are coming in hot with even higher results than what I brought up in yesterday's MOSHBITS episode, with the latest AnTuTu benchmark scores being over 900,000 points, which is far better than all current chips, including Apple's own A14 Bionic. And I'm curious what Samsung will do with their Exynos chips, because those are also looking mighty fine as I reported yesterday, but I'm saying that more in the sense that Samsung is producing all of Qualcomm's 5nm chips, so maybe they'll steal a little bit of that secret sauce that Qualcomm has sprinkled on their chips, whatever. That sounds really weird. But speaking of Samsung, they're also allegedly going to provide their Exynos chips to Xiaomi, Oppo, and Vivo. And I mean, Vivo has already used Exynos chips in their phones even recently, but the latest rumors suggest that Xiaomi and Oppo are the next on the list for Samsung, for the next companies in which Samsung is planning to work with. After all, Samsung has also worked with Apple for a long time as well, so what would be the difference at this point, right? This might make things very interesting, since mid-range phones might get even better at this point, since Samsung's 1080 chip is quite powerful, and this might just be what the competition is after at this point, instead of Snapdragon 600 and 700 chips. But if this sounds all too complicated for you with numbers, Snapdragons, and whatever else I talked previously about VRAM configuration, ray tracing, then why not just make things simple and get yourself a Raspberry Pi 400 keyboard PC? Yes, my friends, you did hear that right, and it is also something you've seen right in the image that I've shown. Now, the Raspberry Pi Foundation, the same guys who are making awesome ARM-based products, are now releasing a compact keyboard that also doubles down as a fully fledged PC, say if you connect it to a monitor and a mouse, of course, because otherwise I don't know how you would be using this only with a keyboard and no screen and nothing. I will make sure to leave a link to the Verge article if you'd like to read more about it and see the review, whatever cool projects you can do with it, because trust me, there's a lot of things you can do with a Raspberry Pi. And last but not least, Spotify is testing a new system in which artists can influence the algorithm. And ooh, this sounds spooky. Imagine if YouTube did that. I would be promoting all of my videos. But there is a catch as always. Do that and you'll earn less. And is it even worth it at this point? Well, I guess it depends if that might lead to other sales, in my opinion, say t-shirts, concert tickets whenever those come back, and vinyls. And here's what Spotify actually had to say about it, and I quote, "We want to be able to provide tools that help our artists leverage those moments, so they can be more in control of the successes on Spotify and more in charge of their careers. But as I was saying, this means that they'll actually get less or lower promotional recording royalty rates. So yeah, is this even good?" You know, I was saying about the Raspberry Pi being very practical, but my question now for you guys is, do you see this as something being actually practical for artists? I'd be curious what you think, especially if you happen to put your music or podcast on Spotify. So make sure to comment in the comment section down below. And there's also some very practical reasons to subscribe to my channel. One I can think of out of the top of my head right now is being up to date with the latest news in tech and gaming, so do that right now and follow me on Twitter and check out crow.com. And yeah, if you want to read all the original articles, they'll be in the video description. Don't forget, this has been Alex with the Red Elk, signing off. Bye.